With the upcoming Fable remake on the horizon, I continue my retrospective journey looking back at the mainline Fable games. I covered Fable 1, and while I love that game so much, it's a 6 out of 10. By far not the best game, but it's amazing for what it accomplishes for a game in 2004. But this retrospective isn't about Fable 1 today. It's about Fable 2. So let's do that. Let's look at Fable 2. And we will be going over similar points from my first retrospective, that being gameplay, story, characters, quests, and balance. Some things will be expanded on, and others will get a light touch. And then we will be talking about that DLC that released with the game. Fable 2 is a much larger game than I remember. I only played it once in 2009, and then another time in 2013. At least, that's the last record on my Xbox account. All footage was recorded through streaming Fable 2 on Microsoft's cloud service, needing Game Pass to access it. And I'm going to be completely fair in this retrospective. My bias against Fable 2 will not affect my retrospective one bit. But we will be talking about my bias. Some glazing I have to kind of give here towards Microsoft. While streaming Fable 2 from the cloud, the experience was exceptionally smooth for the most part. There was the slightest bit of input lag with the camera and the movement on the characters. Combat was hardly noticeable, and minigames were somehow easier because of an input delay that I felt. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. However, there was something odd with the game. Fable 2 had an enormous amount of bloom and motion blur. It was driving me insane. I couldn't really tell if it was the cloud or my game or my monitor. So that's my intro. Now let's address my hot take. And I'm not gonna make any friends when saying this, but growing up, I hated Fable 2 with a passion. When I was first introduced to the game and its world, I thought the time skip was incredibly stupid. Partly because I didn't understand it and the reason behind it. I just found it obstructive. I wanted to continue with a direct sequel to the first game, a continuation of the Hero of Oakvale story. And while yes, this is a direct sequel, it was so detached from the first game itself that it didn't sit right with me. I don't really like time skips in all forms of media, and I never really have, and I still kinda don't. And while I understand you can use time skips as a reset point to tell a new story and introduce new characters, I'm honestly always going to be pretty negative towards it. I always find myself disconnected with the story you're trying to tell should your time skip lead from a previous IP. Now granted, it does not hurt my grading on it. I just don't feel good about the time skip. Next thing is that I really didn't like the introduction of guns into Fable. I felt that in a magical fantasy world where you can cast spells and do all this cool stuff, why do you have guns? Is there a need to advance your society in a modern way that would create guns? Would it make sense if the Elder Scrolls series introduced guns? I found it really frustrating to see guns become the staple of Fable 2, or at least one of the staples. So did the game or the franchise really need guns introduced? Well, for the story and direction they wanted to go with, then yes. Fable's world had advanced 500 years, and the game's lore and loading screen tips talk about this. It talks about how the Heroes Guild got corrupt in times of peace, that the heroes would use their power to hurt innocents for money or take quests only for the income that was given to them, either prior or post, which, let's be honest, if they were already going to be corrupt, it was rarely in post. The Heroes Guild became a mercenary guild, and once gunpowder was discovered and guns were made, people took back their power, every hero was killed, and the guild was destroyed by being burnt to the ground. When I was a kid, I didn't like this answer to why the guild was gone, why there were guns. But looking back while making this video and my previous video, it makes a lot more sense to me now. This is why I've always disliked Fable 2. I hated the time skip and I hated guns. On top of the fact that at the time, I personally found the game really unfun to play. So anytime Fable 2 was ever brought up in conversation, I immediately would say, screw Fable 2. Now over a decade has passed, and I maintain that view for 15 years. So what about now? Well, after playing it again for this retrospective, come to the conclusion of a new opinion. And we will get to that at the end of this video, but for now, grab a snack, get back to work, do your chores, or gaming, what have you. We're gonna be here for a while, and we're going to start with our first topic, the gameplay of Fable 2. Fable 2 was released in October of 2008, with 2 DLCs that were released in 2009, Not Whole Island and See the Future. All gameplay features are much better in Fable 2, while introducing a plentiful amount. It is also kind of crazy how old this game really feels. Don't get me wrong, it feels better to play than Fable 1, but in 2008, I thought this would feel a lot better. For reference, Metal Gear Solid 4, Fallout 3, GTA 4, and Dead Space 1, and Mass Effect 1 all released that same year. All unique styles of games, all feel somewhat different from one another, and have different gameplay styles and mechanics, but Fable 2 feels the most outdated compared to any of those titles. This is not to say it's a bad game, or worse than the first game. It just feels a lot older than it actually is. So let's dive into why I say this. Fable's gameplay once again comes down to the 3 styles of combat: swing a sword, shoot a bow, and use magic. Melee combat is quite better in this game than it is in the first game. Fable 2 takes the exact same style of swinging a sword in the most basic way and made it feel more fluid. When you have a melee weapon equipped, you can freely swing the weapon to attack your enemies. Sound familiar? The direction you swing is where you go. Very simple. But here's where the game sorta changes from the first one. The camera is no longer right behind you for that third-person feel during combat. Instead, the camera is mounted a little bit higher to give you an aerial view of the enemies attacking you, allowing you to control your character much more smoothly. You can see the whole battlefield and are able to use the information provided to block, dodge, change attacks, and prioritize your targets. The lock-on system is also improved in Fable 2, a mechanic that I personally did not find useful in the first game by any means. I used quite a lot more in this one. The camera zooms in just a smidge, not too much, but it allows you to still see the whole field with that aerial view now being a part of that combat. And once you eliminate your target, the lock-on will transition to another target, making it feel much more seamless when fighting multiple enemies. It's a little system that I did not think needed much of a change, but somehow they made it way better and more smooth to utilize in combat. Another little quality of life mechanic that was added is the safety mode toggle. You see, in the first game, you needed to lock onto a citizen and strike them down with a weapon or ability to start chaos. Only then could you freely kill any person without having to lock onto them. With this new safety mode, you can just toggle this off, and it will highlight all civilians, travelers, and guards, allowing you to be as hostile as you wish. On top of that, the old system is still there. The toggle just allows you to control your aggression without extra steps. Play through the whole game with it off for a challenge. Okay, so the raw melee combat has not changed that much. It was improved. What else was? Well, they added new combat styles, that being chain attack and counters. Now, both combat styles I never really utilized in my gameplay, but they were neat. Chain attack would allow for a follow-up attack immediately after striking someone, while counter would allow you to, well, counter them as soon as they're about to strike you. It is nothing crazy, but it is something for people who want to fully build into a melee combat style. Or you can just be like me and mash the X button through the whole game. So they created more build diversity in Fable 2, allowing you to go further down a path that fits your style of play. So let's move on to skill. Skill became my most prominent thing in the entire playthrough. In Fable 1, I always did melee combat. It was my primary go-to because of its ease of use, rarely ever using range weapons. But I also had the occasional power thrown in. So what about now? Well, now I was actually using ranged weapons a lot more. Fable 2 added guns and removed regular bows. Crossbows are still there, and they perform adequately, but guns kind of just tickled something inside me. And that's coming from me. Remember, I said at the start, I do not like guns in this franchise. But do the guns perform any different? Well, yes and no. They perform the same, lock on, free aim, and zoom. They just felt better. At least, they felt better from a crossbow. But anyway, so what was different? Well, in Fable 1, you had to lock on to an enemy with your bow or crossbow, or you had the just free aim, which I call the best guess system, where you would just loosely aim with the bow and try to hit something. Here you have the soft lock system. Enemies will be highlighted, and when you fire a gun or a crossbow, your character will pivot to the highlighted target. And then, once they're shot or killed, this allows you to pivot to the next target. You can just spam and pivot. I felt that this soft lock-on was a lot more smooth and a lot more enjoyable in my experience compared to anything for ranged combat in the first game. Not much of a difference from the first game overall with bows or crossbows, or really the combat here at all. They made a lot of quality of life changes, mostly good ones. But now we're gonna move on to the worst part of the gameplay experience I got to find myself in, and that's willpower. Willpower, in my opinion, butchered the entire tree of spells, completely eliminating having a lot of spells to cycle from, unique types of spells, the mana bar, the entire feeling of being a mage in this game is gone. It does not go without saying, though, that they did do something very special here, at least the bare minimum of special. So let us start at the spells themselves. We have Inferno, Shock, Blades, Chaos, Force Push, Raise Dead, Time Control, and Vortex. 8 spells. For reference, Fable 1 had 20. Like, come on. Okay, sure, some were not balanced in the first game. There were definite outliers, but even the 8 here, there's still outliers. I used Shock the whole game until I wanted to get footage of the other spells. Personally, I found them all boring except for Shock. Inferno is a combination of Fireball and Inflame from the first game. A lot of the spells kind of are combinations from the first game. Inferno can miss, while Shock can hit every single person in the radius depending on the level of attack itself. Force Push does exactly how it sounds. Time Control was an interesting combination of Assassin's Rush and Slow Time. Raise Dead is just Summon, but the enemies never leveled up, at least in my playthrough. You just got more AI to use against the enemies in the game. Vortex and Blades were okay. They were nothing special, and I never really wanted to use them. As for Chaos, Chaos just kind of seemed like one of those spells that seems really cool because of its name, but while in practice, it's just a crowd control spell that makes everybody do whatever they want, and it doesn't feel powerful or meaningful in any way. I felt like they really dropped the ball in limiting spells. So if they're all that bad, at least to me, did they get anything right with them? Well, that'd be the quality of life part, I suppose. You see, in the first game, you had spells as if they were their own weapon. You couldn't use magic at the same time as a sword or a bow. One sword or a bow or the spell or just that spell. However, now you can use your current spell without it being an exclusive style. When you're swinging a sword or shooting, you can press the B button and use that spell at the same time. It complements your combat a little bit more, making you feel like someone who is more skilled in multiple things than just one thing at a time. You can also use various levels of these spells. In Fable 2, all spells have a max level of 5. Your spell bar has 5 dots for each corresponding level. The game allows you to mix each level slot with a spell that is that level. For example, you can use level 1 Inferno, and as you build charge, if you have slotted in level 2 Shock, it will switch to that spell. It's nothing crazy by any means, but this does spice up the vanilla gameplay. I found something like that a little bit more enjoyable. What wasn't enjoyable at all, and I don't care what decision this was, this does not make sense to me. They changed the colors of will and might. In the first game, will potions, your mana bar, and the essence of will that would appear on your character was all blue, and strength was red. Your health was red, your health potions were red. It kind of just made sense. But in Fable 2, they decided, nah, what if we change that? This was so frustrating as someone playing the game, especially someone who is as familiar with the first game as I am. I don't understand what they were doing. So that's your combat gameplay synopsis. We're not done, however, with gameplay. We want to talk about the marriage mechanic. You see, Fable 2 has a mechanic where you're able to get married and have a child. Seems pretty neat. That is a neat feature that doesn't get talked about as much as you may think when discussing Fable 2. In Fable 1, you could get married to either a man or a woman. Fable 2 allows the same thing. That said, most of Fable 2's NPCs are extremely dull. They may have brief descriptions, and they talk about their likes and dislikes in their little portfolio thing, but they barely feel like characters in any capacity. They don't have any personality, they come across as cardboard cutouts, and the two that I found remotely interesting were Alex, either the male or female version, depending on what sex you pick, and Lady Grey through her side quest. And we all know it's because I love Lady Grey. Everyone else feels bland and forgettable. There's so much more I can really talk about here, from the jobs to the housing market to the economy to the demon doors and a lot more. Fable 2 really doubled down on investing into gameplay features, and while they were successful, I think a lot of people I talk to when discussing Fable 2, this is the part that makes them love the game a lot more. I didn't interact with a lot of these features when I was a kid. I made sure to interact with every mechanic at least once. I still don't think I touched everything, so I do apologize if I missed anything. We need to talk about something before we move on to our next section, and that's the dog. Fable 2 introduced a dog companion. The dog can attack players on the ground, do tricks, find hidden treasure, and spots of interest for you to dig, so that you acquire more loot. This is all fine and great for a larger game that Fable 2 is, but I think the dog existing was an awesome addition. However, I found myself more irritated than what they were trying to intend with it. I named my dog Chet after a dog I had growing up, and enemies would constantly hurt Chet. He would whine because he needed to be healed after damage. Now mind you, the dog never dies in combat. He doesn't run away or anything. He just gets hurt and whimpers and limps around. As someone who loves dogs so much, this was a tug at my heartstrings. I would try to then heal Chet, only to be slowed down by the game not presenting the prompt fast enough to heal him. And then when it would show up, I would move and the prompt would fade away. It just kept frustrating me so much that during my playthrough, I found this all too common. I honestly wish that the dog was just removed overall, or that you could dismiss him to your home, or summon him like Scratch from Baldur's Gate 3. The dog is a neat mechanic to gameplay, but I personally did not like it for these reasons. If you're a dog lover, this will probably make you sad in some way. At least it did for me. Okay, compared to Fable 1, Fable 2's balance is more in tune with how an open world RPG should be. You still have the clear line of progression with weapons, albeit a much smaller one, with some that are definitely better overall when you approach later parts of the game. You have your rusty weapons, iron, steel, master, and legendary. Fable 2 makes sure that you get each one at respectable intervals in the game. I had an iron sword for about 5 hours. I had acquired a master sword before halfway through the game, and I acquired a legendary weapon before I even got the master sword, and that's because I speedran a quest to acquire said weapon, only to find out it's a terrible weapon. Each weapon has variations: light and heavy crossbows, flintlocks, blunderbusses, a Gatling style gun, and rifles, hammers, axes, so on and so forth. They managed to somehow condense all the weapons and innovate at the same time for this game. I never felt like there was a best weapon to carry me through the game. Similar to Fable 1, when I did find said best weapon, however, the weapon I did use the most, I did not acquire until late in the game. In my experience, these weapons were perfectly balanced. However, I can't say the same for these will abilities. Willpowers seemed really disproportionate, and when you use one, they would deal a moderate amount to an absurd amount of damage. But to do that amount of damage, you will become a sitting duck. You stand in place, charging up a spell till it gets to its level 5 version to wipe out all enemies. It can work if the enemies don't kill you or knock you over in the process. You are a glass cannon when using will. You do have these trade-offs, but none of this feels good to do. The charge up is very slow, not painfully slow, just slow enough to where you don't want to use it continuously, especially when there's a ton of enemies, but you will want to use it because there are a ton of enemies and it will kill them all. So that trade-off is for you to make as the player. I for one did enjoy using will abilities overall, but I felt like it was just too slow, so I kept using a gun. Fable 2 also got rid of its entire armor system. There is no cool armor in the game. You can wear whatever you want, and enemies all deal a set amount of damage. But since there are no damage values that you can see, you never know how much you are receiving or dealing. And since there is no armor, what do they replace it with? Just clothing. And not even a wide variety of clothing at that. I just found a set of clothes that looked appealing to my eye for my entire playthrough, and I found that this was a poor decision. You are removing the fantasy part of Fable. The enemies are just as balanced like they were in the first game. You have multiple variations of beetles, hobs, bandits, balverines, and undead. You now have mini-bosses and bosses. Banshees and trolls were converted to mini-bosses, but trolls suck so much to fight. They are time wasters. In the first game, you had health gates. Now you just have time wasters, and that's the trolls. The trolls you cannot deal raw damage to. Instead, you shoot bugs that are crawling out of them to take chunks of their health off. But after a single bug dies, every other bug crawls back inside the troll, allowing the troll to do his attack, which takes up to 2 to 3 times. And you will just stand there, not dodging, just standing there, or strafing left to right, because the attack is so obvious. This is a huge misfire on Lionhead's decision. Trolls are unfun to fight, they are incredibly slow, and they should have remained the same as the first game or have been completely removed. Fable 2 also does not have any memorable bosses. Fable 1, you have Twin Blade, a giant scorpion, I guess technically the white balverine, a kraken, maze, and jack-o'-blades twice. Fable 2, the game doesn't have any. Every boss is a brief introduction of their name and what they're gonna do with no health bar, so they just look like another enemy. There's no cutscene for them, there's no mechanic or real ability that they do that makes them memorable. They're just nothing. And they're not even strong. Some of them are completely annoying, while others are flat out weak. Nevertheless, they don't fall over like the first game's bosses did, but they also don't pose any threat. So regardless of how I feel about the enemies and how they were designed, or how encounters were laid out, I can at least say that each were unique in their own way. However, they should have been something more. Banshees, I think, were the only glow up in the game. They were tissue paper in the first game, and now they're a bigger boss that deal damage and summon minions. Last thing for balance is the economy, and gold in this game was surprisingly incredibly easy to get. All the quests don't reward you with any gold, so building up cash is a slow process. You literally need to get a job, and doing these jobs is a grind, but it is very doable. I did find myself swimming in cash after I got 5 stars with the blacksmith job, and then I would buy as many houses as possible, jack the rent way up, and repeat. Or selling clothes that were useless because they're all useless, and every weapon that I didn't use, which came down really quickly, on top of the legendary weapons that you could sell to any shopkeeper. So because of this housing system, which was set up so that I could jack up people's rent, I ended up becoming very corrupt in my playthrough for this reason. Fable 2 has a system where when you rent out the houses, you will acquire the income passively. So while you played, you would get paid. Pretty obvious. However, this system seemed to progress offline. When I would be done recording footage and streaming, I would log off and then log back in a day or two later and receive thousands to 10,000s of gold, because the time between these sessions was so large. While neat, this also seemed to break the economy, because after a day or two, depending on how many houses, you would just get a huge influx of cash. Balance of Fable 2 is much better than its predecessor, so now we get to come to the favorite part, at least my favorite part, and that's the narrative. What can be said about Fable 2's story is quite easy. It is very memorable, however short, and your motivations as the character are simple. Even though you do not have dialogue through the entire game, characters you meet will become memorable and each have their own distinction set up by the narrative. Not every character is the same compared to its predecessor. Some of these characters will get more screen time than others, while at the same time leaving you with enough breadcrumbs that make you want more from said character. Once again though, the story is even more interesting in the lore books, diaries of these characters, and what our narrator describes to us. I did really enjoy the story of this game, but that is not to say it doesn't have flaws, because it does. It very much does. So let's begin our synopsis of Fable 2's narrative. We begin with a gorgeous pre-rendered cutscene showing us the city of Barrowstone. I cannot stress this enough about how beautiful this cutscene is, and how it shows you, the player, what there is to explore and see. While yes, you don't get access to everything shown in the zone, it doesn't need to be everything. The cinematic of the town is to show you what advancements the city of Barrowstone has made, and as a meta perspective of what advancements the game has done as well. Anyway, we get to choose our protagonist, either a boy or a girl. I played a girl for this playthrough, since the first game doesn't allow this type of decision. After the cutscene, we get pooped on by a bird, and Rose tells us that getting pooped on by a bird is good luck. She trails off to tell us about how beautiful Castle Fairfax looks in the snow, which I can't deny does look beautiful. Rose hears some commotion down the road and rushes to investigate. We move to find a crowd of people around a sales grifter, claiming that his goods are magical. Once he shows off a couple items, he shows us a little music box, claiming it belonged to the Old Kingdom, and that if you turn the handle 3 times, you will be granted a single wish. Rose says that there's no such thing as magic, to which another prospective customer says it's a sad day even when children stop believing in magic. Rose asks the big what if. What if the music box is real and can grant a wish? This customer says that for 5 gold coins, we could know for sure. So we begin to hunt down for 5 gold pieces. We collect all 5 by finding bounty papers, killing beetles, helping some separated lovers, giving a woman alcohol to prevent her husband's alcoholism, and by posing for a photo. We also save a dog too, because it's the right thing to do. So we go to purchase the music box. Rose wishes to live in Castle Fairfax. As the music box winds up, it begins to glow, suddenly poofing away. Our wish was not granted, and a disappointed Rose and I return home and go to bed, where a furry friend greets us. In the middle of the night, a guard approaches and informs us that Lord Lucian has summoned us. We are brought before the castle and are met with Jeeves. Jeeves takes us to Lord Lucian. We pass a strange man on our way and tells us to be silent about Lord Lucian's tragic backstory of the loss of his family. Lucian greets us pleasantly, asks us what our wish was. After Rose tells him, Lucian discusses that an arrangement can be made for us to live in the castle with him, but he does need our help with an experiment. He asks us to stand on a plate, and as we do, he gets excited to what he sees because a strong barrier appears around us. He claims that we have strong blood, making us descendants of heroes. Lucian touches the barrier around us, and things shift to red. He claims something is wrong, only to look through his notes, noting that neither Rose nor I are the 3 heroes he is looking for, but one of us is the 4th. Lucian pulls out a gun and says, "I'm sorry," before he shoots Rose, and then proceeds to shoot us. We fly through the window, falling down to our death, only to be met by an old blind woman and a dog, as she whispers that death is not our future today. 10 years pass and we regain our strength. Teresa is the blind woman we met in Barrowstone as a child, and she prepares us for our journey. She tells us we need to travel to the center of Bower Lake and search the remnants of the Heroes Guild. She hands us the guild seal, allowing us to unlock the central chamber, and we set off. Progressing through the cave, we find some books that tell us about the guild's fall, as well as a book on the previous hero, the hero of Oakvale. As we reach the Chamber of Fate, we get to see the key art from Fable 1 on the wall, telling us the story of the hero of Oakvale's past, but nothing more. We acquire the power of will, and Teresa tells us to meet her in Barrowstone. The pathway to the town is blocked. A local guard says we must defeat a bandit named Thag to allow us to proceed. We do that with ease because Thag is just a regular bandit. We head into town to meet Teresa. She informs us that Lucian is rebuilding the Tattered Spire, a huge monumental structure that was once built during the Old Kingdom, said to have the power to grant a single wish by channeling the entire world's will. Now Lucian seeks to rebuild that spire. Teresa gives us some tarot cards and informs us that the only way to stop Lucian is with the help of the heroes foretold in the cards, and that we must travel to Oakfield and find the Hero of Strength. We make our way to Oakfield and meet a monk. He is the head monk of the Temple of Light. This monk wants to send someone with great strength to assist his other monk. Directing us to the cave, we meet a monk with whom we'll be accompanying, Sister Hannah. Hannah is the daughter of the Temple of Light's leader. As we traverse through the cave to collect water, Hannah talks about how much she loves fighting, but that her culture does not allow this. As we are finishing the ritual, another monk rushes into the cave to inform us that one of Lucian's men is attacking the temple. We race there only to find out that it's too late and Hannah's father is dead. Hannah grieves and screams that if only she had stayed, this wouldn't have happened and she could have protected her father. At the funeral for her father, Hannah mourns, claiming that this can't be the end of her story. When Teresa arrives, she states Hannah's importance for the journey to come. She asks for Hannah's hand and is told to no longer call her Hannah, but to call her Hammer, and is brought back to the Heroes Guild. Teresa says we need to return to the guild at once. When we do, she informs us of where the Hero of Will, a man named Garth, is, and that he is in Brightwood Tower. We go to Brightwood and Garth's home is under attack by Lucian's men. We slaughter those men and are again too late. Garth is captured and taken away to the Spire. We return to the guild to discuss with Teresa on our next steps. She tells us that a man named Jeeves, Lucian's former butler, is in Barrowstone Tavern and that we should go meet him. We arrive at said tavern to meet Jeeves. He briefs us on Lucian's journal and that this could provide more information that we seek about him. We collect all the journal pages and bring them back to Teresa. She enlightens us on where Lucian is recruiting people and that we should head to Westcliff. Hammer chimes in and says that there's nothing in Westcliff but thieves and thugs and the Crucible. Teresa states that's where he is getting his soldiers from. Hammer exclaims that she's tired of sitting around and would like to go with us, and we both set off to participate in the Crucible so that Lucian's men will recruit us. As we reach Westcliff, Hammer is told that she cannot participate in the Crucible. Only we can. We steamroll the Crucible, making the recruitment go with ease. Once done, Hammer informs us that they will be recruiting down by the beach. Before we depart though, Hammer says that she will watch our dog while we are in the spire. We board the boat and take off. As we walk off the boat, there is a group of new recruits that we will be joining, including a very chatty one. This recruit is just enamored with the interior of the spire. We shuffle forward to be greeted by Lucian. Lucian describes our role in the spire. Then, he puts us to sleep. Upon awakening, a fellow guard instructs us to meet with the Commandant. As we walk to him, we pass Garth's cell. Garth is inside and informs us to follow every order so that we can lay low and eventually escape. We need to have patience. Meeting the Commandant, he tells us that the collar all soldiers are wearing are not for show. They will cause extreme harm to our memories should we disobey the commands that are given to us. Inside the spire, we are put through tests of morality, choosing to feed slaves or letting them suffer, killing a friend we met or sparing him. We choose to follow all the orders provided so that our cover is not blown. Years have passed. The Commandant requests our presence and tells us that a soldier has died. As we go to investigate, we find the body tucked away in a corridor, and upon examination, Garth approaches us from behind and breaks our collar. Garth exclaimed to us that it took years for him to focus enough will to break the collars. Rushing through to escape the spire, Garth and I are ambushed by the Commandant. We dispatch him with ease, we board a boat, and escape the spire. Teresa and our dog greet us on the Bay of Oakfield. As Garth approaches her, she notifies both of us that 10 years have passed since we arrive at the spire, and the world has changed since we last saw it. Teresa takes Garth's hand and prepares to take him to the guild, saying that we should seek out Hammer and that she has a lead on the next hero. We go to a bar and meet Hammer. She informs us that the hero of skill is in a town called Bloodstone, but the only way to get there is through a Cullis Gate. So for the Cullis Gate to be active, we will need Garth's help. We are told to go to Brightwood Tower where Garth and Hammer will be. As we approach the gate of the tower, we are met with both Garth and Hammer. We go up to the tower only to find that Lucian's men are waiting for an ambush. We fend them off and help defend Garth while he constructs the gate. As the portal is made, our character jumps through, leaving our team behind. We arrive in Wraithmarsh, the destroyed area that was once Oakvale. We proceed through the area, finding out more about what destroyed the town. As we arrive in the town of Bloodstone and its port, we see that it is a scumbag town, and Reaver's house is at the top of the hill, and we see that Reaver is getting a portrait made of himself. The narcissism on Reaver just radiates. Reaver instructs us to do him a favor and to take the seal. He hands us a seal for a building in Wraithmarsh. Traversing through the building, we meet a girl crying. She tells us that she lost all of her friends, when suddenly the shadows appear. The shadows inform us that whoever bears the seal of shadow, they will forego their youth, and that Reaver will take all the youth for his own. Like the evil person we were, I force the seal upon the girl and she loses her youth and becomes old. As she cries, I kill her and put her out of her misery. We return the Reaver only to see that now, instead of a painting, he is getting a photo taken from a reoccurring character who Reaver proceeds to kill. Thanks, man. Reaver makes a comment about our appearance, then informs us that Lucian's men will be arriving shortly to take us away. All of a sudden, a guard shows up to inform us that Lucian's men are here and are attacking the town, looking for both Reaver and I. Reaver decides to tuck tail and escape through a hidden tunnel. I accompany Reaver and we fight some guards, arriving on a little cove where Reaver's ship is. On the cove, we are met by Garth and Hammer. Suddenly, a shard arrives to destroy Reaver's ship before he can escape like a coward. All four of us make a final stand to destroy the attacking goons and the shard itself. Upon defeating the shard, Reaver informs us that he will be leaving because this is not his problem. And Teresa arrives only to say that he must come with her, for we need his help to defeat Lucian. Reaver says that he doesn't care, and Teresa says you should because Lucian will control everyone. He will never be able to regain his youth. Reaver reluctantly decides to help us, and we all return to Bower Lake to gather for the summoning of a weapon to stand against Lucian. However, Lucian arrives in person. Teresa disappears, he captures all the heroes, takes them to the spire, and Lucian tells us that he made a mistake by not confirming our death. all those years ago, and now that he intends to correct it. Should you have married someone and have kids, Lucien will inform you that your family is dead and that he saw to that personally, so that his mistake never happens again. As Lucien points a gun to us, he apologizes for his actions and fires. Our dog leaps in front of the shot, dying to protect us. Lucien then mocks the sacrifice and proceeds to shoot us again. The screen fades to black. We awake on a farm with our sister Rose. She says that our parents are out of town and suggests that we do some activities to kill time. Afterward, we go to bed, only to wake up to the sound of music. We follow it despite Rose calling us back and find the music box. The same music box the grifter sold us. When we pick it up, it transports us to the center of the spire, where Lucien is drawing power from the other three heroes. The music box is the weapon meant to stop him. It's the one we summoned. We wind up the music box, disrupting Lucien's plan, and as he monologues, we shoot him in the chest. Teresa says the spire has awakened, and it can grant us one wish. Our wishes are to revive everyone who suffered under Lucien, to bring back our family and dog, or to choose wealth. We choose the right option, and we restore all the lives of the people who died during the spire's creation. Teresa thanks us, our heroes thank us, and Teresa then asks the other heroes that they get to choose where they would like to go, and she can send them anywhere. Each one chooses a destination and they leave. But before we leave, Teresa tells us that the world is ours to enjoy, but the spire belongs to her. And that's the end of the story. It's very brief, noticeably so. Characters are introduced and then quickly pushed aside, which makes the pacing kind of feel jarring. Scenes rarely last long enough to develop, and that's an odd choice for sure. The only scene that lasts long enough for a character development in any way is really Hammer. So this is the second Fable game where the story spends less time on building its characters and more time sending you off to explore. Now granted, when you meet the character, they do talk about themselves, so I guess it does expand these characters a little bit, but somehow it feels like you're not left with enough. And I find that frustrating because the world is very compelling, yet the characters rarely get enough focus. In the end, you have your villain, you have your motivations, and a set of companions. Not much beyond that. I think the story works, especially compared to the first game, but it could have been a lot stronger. Okay, so the story is quick, and it's not terrible, but it is incredibly short. Well, like my first video, how about the characters? What are they like? Well, I can confidently say that the characters in Fable 2 are miles ahead of all the characters, except one, in the first game. However, that's like saying a public bathroom in a Walmart is better than a gas station restroom. Sure, it is better and a little cleaner, but it's still kind of bad. The characters we have are Lucien, Teresa, Garth, Hammer, and Reaver. Those are the only characters to discuss, really. So let's start with Garth. Garth is a scholar. Lucien's diary shows that he helped discover the spire and begin its construction. He clearly cares about the people of Albion, studies Old Kingdom artifacts, and is highly knowledgeable. Even so, he does feel underdeveloped. He's stoic, and there is really not much else to explore, which I think makes him the weakest character. He is the will user who wants to do the right thing. He was present the night of our sister died, and yet he did nothing. Once he learns Lucien's plan to destroy Albion, he does turn against him. My assumption is that he values human life and may feel guilty about Lucien's actions, but honestly, I'm kind of just grasping at straws here. Teresa is stronger than Garth as a character. Teresa is a mystery of a character to me, though she still feels underdeveloped because the game gives us so little of her. Lucien's diaries reveal that she set him on the path to the spire, just as Teresa sets us up for the story ahead. Yet once everything is over, she claims the spire for herself. That is all we get of her, and that kind of makes her deceptive, morally ambiguous, and deeply cryptic. She reminds me a little bit of Kreia from KOTOR 2, mainly because she's just an old woman who's blind and can perceive the future, but pursues her own agenda. Now, if you've played KOTOR 2, you know how it ends. But you can understand why I would kind of make those connections if you don't think about the ending yet. Even with the limited screen time she has, she is still a compelling character, and I would honestly like to see her in the remake of Fable. I think it would be compelling to tell a story with Teresa in the new Fable, but I'm not a writer, so I don't know how they could do it, but I think it would be really interesting to see. Reaver is the next character I find especially interesting. Above all, he is deeply unlikable. From the moment you meet him, he comes across as self-centered and narcissistic. He sacrifices other people's youth to the Court of Shadows so he can avoid aging. And you come to find out in his notes that he is responsible for Oakvale's destruction, which doubles down as I don't like you. He does also betray you at the first chance he gets for his own self-interest. Should you buy his house and listen to his journals, they do reinforce what a terrible person he is and how he has no redeeming qualities. He may feel guilty for Oakvale, but he really doesn't. It just seems like he does at the same time. He is haunted, but he is burying those feelings. Hammer comes from a reserved, non-violent group, but fighting is clearly in her nature. She is a strong-willed, physically powerful, and feels like a born warrior. When she tears a stone hammer from a statue's hand and easily dispatches a goon, it establishes her presence as a strong figure immediately. Her voice actor also gives a very strong performance in the game, especially in the scenes after her father's death and at his funeral. All of these characters are good when you compare them to characters from the first game, but in my opinion, I feel like all of these characters are brought up to the level that Lady Grey is in the first game. Because in the first game, Lady Grey does have a lot going on for her, and I think all of these characters are on her level, but that is my opinion. So I would say these characters are just as good as her, if I was to put them on a scale. However, there is Lord Lucian. Lord Lucian is a man consumed by grief over the loss of his family. Teresa whispers in his ear, setting him on the path to restore the spire and its power. But his diaries suggest the tattered spire corrupted him in some way, twisting that grief into a desire to wipe the world clean and start over. Lucian is cruel and twisted, yet still tragic. He regrets killing your sister and trying to kill you, but he refuses to abandon his goal. I like Lucian because he feels both villainous and redeemable compared to others. He's far more compelling than Jack of Blades, who's mostly the stereotypical villain or the muahaha type villain, until you go outside the games and learn more about Jack. I found that these characters were satisfying. Are they tropey? Sure. But you know, that isn't always a bad thing. Character tropes work. They can tell a story and uplift your story in the ways that you want it to be. So while they're not perfect, they are much more interesting than Fable 1's characters, with the exception of Lady Grey. But that's my opinion. I will keep forcing Lady Grey. I love her. What are quests like in Fable 2? Much better than Fable 1, that's for sure. The game has two main types: repeatable quests and linear quests. Repeatable quests are exactly how they sound. You collect something or kill a target, and then do it again. They are functional, but not especially interesting. The linear quests are where Fable 2 stands out the most. A lot of them force you to make a choice that tests your values. The world this time is not as black and white as the first game, and the game is constantly going to ask you to think about the consequences of what you do. Teresa reinforces this idea early on. After you kill Thag and his men, she reflects on the moments and memories they will never have again. She pushes the statement directly to you. Do you feel anything for what you did? And those answers matter. Saying no pushes you towards a colder, more sociopathic mindset, while saying yes suggests a lot more empathy on your actions. I think this is what Fable 2 wants from you. It wants you to think about the choices and decide what kind of person you want to be. Take Reaver's quest in the Shadow Court, for example. When you arrive, you find a woman trapped there. You learn that whoever bears the seal will give up their youth. So what's the right choice? Do you sacrifice your own youth or force that fate onto someone else? The Spire storyline does something similar. Over time, you befriend another character, and eventually the game asks whether you're willing to kill him or give up the experience instead. It's a simple choice on paper, but the game frames it in a way that makes you pause and consider what you would actually do. The ending of the game continues that idea with your final wish. Do you revive everyone who died building the Spire, even though your family stays dead? Do you choose wealth and abandon everyone else? Or do you choose to bring your spouse, child, dog, and sister back to life while leaving everyone else's loved ones dead? From the outside, these decisions may seem easy because it is still a video game, but even so, they are much more thoughtful than most of the choices in Fable 1. Many of the side quests aim for that same kind of moral tension, however not completely all there. Fable 2 rarely gives you a clean, straightforward answer. The game still has traces of black and white morality, don't get me wrong, but more often than not, it wants you to stop and reflect for the choices and think for yourself. But don't worry though, there are still silly side quests that you can do. Not every single one is going to ask you these types of choices, but it is something that I appreciate that most of them do, even the story ones. Fable 2 also had two DLCs, Not Whole Island and See the Future. Now there isn't a lot to be said about these, however I did want to touch on them. Not Whole Island is a combat heavy DLC with one huge issue. You can bring your dog back to life. Your dog dies at the end of Fable 2's story, and this DLC allows you to sacrifice a follower to resurrect your furry companion. Should you have not chose to do the love wish in the spire, your dog remains dead. But doing this quest on Knothole Island by sacrificing an individual will allow you to circumvent that wish. Doing this doesn't even give you negative points. You are killing someone and turning them into a dog. This is incredibly pathetic. You should not be allowed to do this. Your actions and decisions lead you to the point where your dog dies for you, and you can choose to bring him back, but it does have a cost. To circumvent that decision undermines the whole point of making sacrifices and thinking about your choices. I did find this completely insulting to what Fable 2 was doing. Almost every single quest has options, but you made a DLC purposefully to circumvent a hard decision because, oh, how are people gonna find loot? I get it, but then maybe you shouldn't have killed the dog in the first place. See the Future DLC is just shenanigans, and it's just a preview to Fable 3. That's it. I have nothing more to say on that DLC. After all that, what are my ultimate thoughts? Well, at the start of this video, I mentioned how I hated Fable 2 as a kid, and I retained those feelings for most of my life. So after playing the game again, in 2026, how do I feel? Well, hold on there. Let's talk about some stuff a little bit more. While playing this game, I found myself wanting to come back after every session. Each stream that I ended, I immediately wanted to keep playing. I was really enjoying the gameplay, the activities, and the loot. All the content that was being provided was really satisfying, something that I was looking for. But the game still has many issues. Most NPCs feel pointless to interact with because they have no personality. One of my biggest complaints is that this game lets you have a family, yet very few potential partners are even memorable or appealing. Most characters look bland. All the women have this Victorian style to them, except for escorts. And all the men look super generic and dirty. Only 2 side quests offer partners who stood out, and that's Alex and Lady Grey. I married both during my playthrough, though I did sacrifice Alex to the Temple of Shadows. And then unfortunately, Lady Grey was killed by Lucian. So when I returned to an empty house after her death, it left me feeling hollow, because remember how much I do love Lady Grey. Losing the one other marriage partner I cared about the most made me regret not choosing the wish that would bring her back. So that emotional weight made Fable 2 for me a lot more than in times past. And I think that weight will be something I remember fondly about the game. Similar to how Whisper leaves in Fable 1, or how characters die in Mass Effect, think about the Mass Effect DLC where everything's a big party. I love Lady Grey a lot. I find her super interesting, so losing her stings quite a bit. But in a way, it's bittersweet for me, just like things in Mass Effect and other games. Kingdom Come Deliverance, Baldur's Gate 3, those 2 recent games, they're bittersweet. There are bittersweet endings out there, and I think alone, Lady Grey dying sealed the deal for my opinion on Fable 2. The morality system was also particularly important, and it honestly changed my stance on something for the new Fable. You see, the creators of the new Fable talked about how they remove the physical effects your character can have based on their actions. At first, I completely disagreed with this decision. This is what made Fable, and while it is something that makes Fable, I am okay that they removed it, and I now back that decision. I played through all of Fable 2 with no viable way of redeeming myself. I ended up growing horns and scars, I was corrupt for raising the rent all the way, and slaughtering an entire town. There was really nothing I could do to redeem myself. Even at the end of the game, when I chose to bring everyone back who died building the spire, it wasn't enough to swing me back to a good side. I was still an evil person. So with no way to change my appearance, why should the new one have this mechanic? Because it might be a waste of development time is how I felt. Not every person in Fable can show physical changes. Lucian wasn't affected, he was evil, but your looks don't define who you are. It's your actions, even Teresa's. It seemed fairer to me that the new Fable abandons physical changes overall because things are becoming less black and white. Don't get me wrong, I'm still not the biggest fan that they're cutting this out, but I am okay with it, and it won't affect my opinion when the game releases. I really do not like the removal of will abilities. This fantasy setting game removed will abilities. Sure, you still have them, just not as many. you just don't feel like an amazing wizard anymore. The game also has an egregious amount of bloom. I had to ask some other friends and look at older footage to confirm my suspicions. Fable 2 has way too much bloom. The game is very ugly, and comparing to the first game, on top of all the NPCs, the weapons, and the clothing, this is not a pretty game, with the exception of the cutscenes. Ending here, I do not hate Fable 2 as much as I used to. I think it's a good game, one that could be a lot better had it have been remastered like Fable 1 was. But I finally understand why a lot of people that I've spoken to praise it so much as one of their favorite games. This is not to say that Fable 1 is superior in any way. Both games are equal and do something better than the other. But Fable 2 is a 6 out of 10, just like the first game. And I personally would not play Fable 2 again. It's a large open world game, and replayability isn't really there, since you can do most of everything in one go, especially since this game isn't pretty to look at. I would, however, absolutely recommend that people go back and play Fable 2, should they feel an interest to, though playing it is somewhat difficult since the only options are for you to boot up an Xbox 360 or to stream it on cloud like I did. I am glad I went back to play it for this retrospective. I had a lot of fun, and Fable 2 will stick with me so much more in the years to come. Now, we definitely didn't touch on everything, some stuff was missed, but it's not always going to be covered. I want some things to be left for you to find on your own. I became super invested with Fable's world growing up, and that's really why I'm so excited for a remake. I am very grateful for all the memories that are being made during these playthroughs again. People coming into my streams talking about Fable and seeing these videos on YouTube means a lot to me. This was my third redraft of the script, and I was really having trouble writing and speaking over it. I was stumbling a lot. So when speaking to one of my friends, he asked if it was because I wasn't passionate for Fable 2 as I was for the first game. And he's actually very correct on this. I'm not passionate about Fable 2, but I am passionate about making these videos and playing these games. I'm passionate about the Fable franchise. Fable 2 was a great game to play. I cannot stress that enough. And I really look forward to what Fable 3 brings to the table. I only played Fable 3 once, way back in the day, and I loved it a lot more than Fable 2. So I'll be streaming it on the YouTube channel and Twitch. But until then, I would like to thank you if you made it this far in the video. I really love putting my brain to the test for these retrospectives and bringing out the best and worst of Fable in preparation for the new Fable, because we are going to talk about what should be in the new Fable if they bring anything from these old games. But so far, I have a conclusion for the end of my next video. With that all said, thank you everyone, and I will see you in a Fable 3 retrospective.